Amanda. Happy Artsy Fartsy Friday and welcome back to my channel. Before we get into the exciting content of today's video, I wanted to jump on here and make just a super brief, important announcement, and that is that I am going to be traveling out of the country for the first time in a month. Oh my god, it's so soon. Basically 3 weeks out of May, I am going to be traveling all over Europe. And it's my first time out of the country. I'm obviously very, very excited. But until I depart to Europe, I wanted to kind of run a promotion on my Store Envy shop. So from now, the day that this video is posted, April 6th until May 6th, I am going to be having a sale on my online store where if you use the code TRAVEL at checkout, you will receive 10% off of your purchase. And really, you guys, this would mean a lot to me. Obviously, it's going to help fund my adventures abroad, but also it just means a lot that you guys love my art and support me. Obviously, I understand not everybody is able to purchase my artwork, and I totally understand. I believe Store Envy is also like PayPal only, so it gets a little bit complicated with the payment method there. But if you cannot support me through Store Envy, I love that you watch my videos. I love that you guys thumbs up and subscribe. That means a lot. It also means a lot when you guys purchase from my Redbubble, and I'm recently an Amazon affiliate, so any of the purchases that you make through my Amazon links really go to benefit my channel as well. So if you're already thinking of buying something from Amazon and you click my link to get there, that means so much. It's seriously from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. I love and appreciate all of you. But I did just want to let you guys know about this promotion that will be running from April 6th until May 6th, at which time I will be rushing to get all of those orders out before I hop on a plane and leave for 3 weeks. And during that time, my Store Envy shop will be closed so that I don't get any orders that I cannot fulfill within a reasonable time frame. So yes, thank you guys so much. If you guys do buy something, or even if you just click the links down below, it means a lot to me. I sincerely appreciate it. But without further ado, let's get into today's video because it's gonna be a good one. Alright, now I know most of you watching this video are not strangers here. You know what we do here on this channel, but if you're new here, let me fill you in. I am a traditional artist by trade. I tend to work with traditional mediums such as watercolor and markers. I've been collecting Copic markers for over 9 years now, and I love and adore them. But recently, I've sort of been venturing out into the internet and finding some cheaper alternatives to Copic markers. And surprisingly, there's a lot out there. Most of the markers I've tried and most of the markers I will continue trying kind of fall into a different category than the marker I'm going to be reviewing today. Those markers are still alcohol-based, still double-ended, but most of them don't have brush nibs. However, the markers I'm going to be reviewing today do. These are the FineColour alcohol-based markers. These were actually a gift, but you can find them on Amazon. I got this for Christmas, so thank you to the lovely family member that got these for me. And I will try and link this exact set down below, although last time I looked on Amazon, it was hard to find a set that had these exact colors, but they are available in many different kinds of sets, so I will have several options linked down below for you. They come in this nice little case, and inside you get 36 alcohol-based markers. Now, FineColour is one of those companies that has bullet nibs and brush nibs available. The bullet nib markers are obviously a little bit cheaper, and you're going to be spending a little bit more coin to get you the brush nib, but I do highly, highly recommend that if you have the money and you're interested in Copics, that you splurge a little bit more and get the brush nib just to see if you like it and want to try it out. The brush nib markers come in a black barrel, whereas the bullet nib markers have a white barrel. So you can usually tell right from the picture which one you're looking at. So now let's switch over to my desk where I can show you guys the swatches and a couple of the tests that I did to try out these markers. All right, now before I get into swatching the markers in this set and talking about the specific breakdown of these 36 colors, I wanted to just offer a very brief comparison of the Copic markers to the FineColour markers. They are virtually the exact same size, though the FineColour markers are just slightly longer, but that's mostly due to the caps. So the size of the barrel between the two markers is pretty much exactly the same. So that would lead me to assume that the amount of ink in each of these markers is roughly the same. You can see sort of on the labeling that it's very similar, which might lead you to believe that FineColor intended these to be sort of duplicates for the Copic markers. The chisel nib on both markers is about the same, which is pretty standard for most inexpensive markers, so I'm not going to dwell too much on that. I will say that the caps on the FineColor markers are slightly different. They have sort of these grooves and angles in them, which I guess make it easier to grip and pull your cap off, but it doesn't really make that much of a difference in my opinion. As far as the brush nibs go, they also look to be pretty similar. The barrel that holds the brush nib on the FineColor marker is a little bit more elongated, which probably contributes to the overall marker being just slightly longer, but the brush nib itself is very similar, both in texture and in length and size. So again, I just wanted to offer a very brief overview of how these markers compare to Copic's, although in the various tests that I conducted with these markers, I didn't necessarily offer side-by-sides with the Copic markers. So what you're seeing in my little swatch chart here is pretty much just the FineColor swatches, not any Copic comparisons. Hopefully you guys are okay with that. I mean, I could be really long-winded and stay here all day comparing these markers to Copic's, but I think you guys will be able to make some informed decisions for yourself. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this set comes with 36 colors. This is just a brief overview of the colors I received in this set. Again, I could not find this exact set with these exact colors on Amazon. I will keep looking, and if I'm able to find it, I will of course link it down below. But if not, I will have some other options available for you that are still the FineColor brush markers, just maybe not these exact colors. Unfortunately, if I'm not able to find this exact set, this whole first part of the video is sort of negated, but I just kind of want to quickly talk about the colors that I received in this set. So hopefully I can go through that without dwelling on it for too long. The first thing is that I really liked the color variety in this set. I feel like you get a good mix of warms and cools, you get a good mix of neutrals and colors. The one thing that I will say that were drawbacks for me is that there aren't a lot of dark colors in my opinion. There's a lot of light colors and mid-tones, but there aren't necessarily a lot of those deep tones that you might use to create dimension and shadows with. So that was one drawback for me. I love that you get some warm and cool grays in here. I love that you get a nice black. The one thing that I wish they would have included was a few more reds so that this really bright, beautiful jewel-toned red wasn't just sitting alone by itself without anything to really blend into. As far as I know, that's really the only color that I feel like stands out and doesn't really have a sort of obvious pair in this set, which is a huge bummer because I love working with reds, but everything else in this set I really feel like has a nice complementary color to be used with it. As far as I can tell, there's no real color coding system here. They sort of seem to come in sets of like 2 or 3 that work well together, sort of like the Copic color blending families, but there's not really a consistent coding throughout that I can really decipher. But maybe it's just like a really complicated code that I don't understand. So let's talk about the layering really quickly. I tend to kind of do 5 standard layers with sort of a mid-tone color so we can see how it builds on itself. First layer, pretty standard. It looks basically like it does in the swatch. This was the color 30. Second layer, you can see it does get quite a bit darker. Not a lot of differentiation between layers 3 and 4. Layer 5, slightly darker, but after about 4+ layers, what tends to happen is that the paper gets a little bit too saturated, and so the ink kind of tends to pool on the surface of the page a little bit longer and it looks a little bit less smooth. So I wouldn't really recommend more than 4 layers of any given color, although maybe that was just the instance with this color. That is kind of typical for alcohol-based markers though, and this isn't necessarily like an outlier situation. As far as blending, I really love the brush nib markers in general for blending. It makes it much easier to create a smooth gradient, as you can see here. I tended to use 2 colors from the same color family here just to kind of give a very obvious gradient example. However, then I moved on to mixing colors from different color families, and I found that to be just as effortless. You can see I blended the sort of muted purple into this nice lighter blue very effortlessly. It's really easy to feather the colors into one another when you have that brush nib, so I really liked that. This green and this blue blended really well. This peachy tone and this beige blended beautifully. I love that, and I'd used this color combination in several of the drawings that I did to kind of test these out. These two didn't blend beautifully. This 212 pink color is like really vivid. So this might have been a bit of wishful thinking to try and get these two colors to blend. But overall, I'm very, very pleased with this. I'm also really pleased overall with how many beautiful desaturated colors you get in this set. A lot of cheaper marker sets really tend to give you a lot of those bright, punchy colors, but they don't necessarily give you nice desaturated tones to complement those brighter colors. So I like that this set gives you so many of those in so few colors, so I really, really like that as well. I did some experimenting with layering lighter colors on top of darker colors, as well as kind of playing around with, you know, if that lifted or feathered in any way, and this technique doesn't work as well with these markers as it does with Copics. You guys know if you use Copic markers, you can layer a lighter color over a darker color and get some really cool effects. I didn't find that to be as apparent with these markers, though you can still get some effects. You can see I tried to do it with the pink and the black here though, and it didn't really work out that well. Similarly, I tried out some techniques with rubbing alcohol and the Colorless Blender. Rubbing alcohol actually seemed to work better, and I did this in one of my coloring demos as well, and I really like the way that that looks. I think it looks really neat. The Colorless Blender, not as much. It could just be that I used it with this really strong red, but in my opinion, the Colorless Blender was a little bit weak with these particular markers. Another comparison that I can make about these colors to Copics is that the ink is almost a little bit more sheer, and I don't mean that in a bad way, because Copics are the same way and I kind of love this about them, but the ink doesn't go down super opaque right away, which kind of gives you the opportunity to use a lighter hand, get different textures, and it almost just creates like it enhances the graininess of the paper, which some people don't like about Copics. I personally do like this, but I do like that the ink isn't super pungent, I suppose, with these markers, because it's very similar to Copics in that way, and so it's something that I'm even more familiar with. And some of the cheaper markers, I am not prepared for the level of pigment that they put down right away, and these were a little bit nicer to build up gradually. Also, this is all done on cardstock. Some of the demos that I did were on the Crescent render paper, so you'll get to see me use these on a few different types of paper, but just to swatch and make my little color charts, I used Georgia Pacific cardstock, which is actually really great for markers. I like it a lot. So you can see I did some examples here of how the brush nib kind of tapers and how it, you know, kind of, you're able to create varying line widths, and then I test out the chisel nib as well. As far as I can tell, pretty standard, very similar to Copic markers. If you have not tried a brush nib and you're interested in purchasing a set of brush nib markers, I think these would be a really nice set. I tried out some ink durability tests here. These are pretty standard, and these are some of my most used inking pens. You can see I tried out the Sharpie Fine Tip, that worked well. Sakura Microns, no smudging. Colorless pencils, they smudge, but I don't necessarily recommend using colored pencils with your Copic markers unless you kind of go over the colored pencil with a kneaded eraser first. Otherwise, you will get some smudging, especially with a darker colored pencil like this black Colorless. Copic Gossan Fude pen. This is a new contribution because I picked this up somewhat recently, and as the name would imply, it works well with Copics and other alcohol-based markers, so virtually no smudging there as well. And then this last one here is also one that I kind of threw in. It's a little bit of a curveball, but the Pilot High-Tech C 0.25. This is a really awesome fine tipped pen, and it's actually a gel pen, so I was interested to see how this would perform, and it performed beautifully. So I was really happy with that as well. So now that I've kind of given you an overview of this set as a whole and kind of given you my thoughts and my brief breakdown, I'm gonna cut away to the coloring demos and talk about things like price and a couple of those other tidbits that I forgot to mention here. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut to the speed paint portion of the video so that we can address those issues. So first of all, let's talk about price. The 36 set of the FineColour brush markers retails for about $68. $68 is not necessarily what I would consider cheap, so I want to make this clear right off the bat. I'm not saying that these are a cheap marker, however, they are still cheaper than Copic's. The 36 set of markers works out to about $1.80 per marker. That is very reasonable, so that is just something to keep in mind. The set of 24 retails for about $50, which works out to closer to $2 per marker. So you are getting a better value by purchasing in a set, and the larger set you purchase, the more money you save. So that is something to keep in mind. And you know, when you consider Copic's, even the Copic Chow markers are double to triple the price. So I do think that if you are curious about alcohol-based markers, these would not be a bad place to start. Like I mentioned, the color variety in this set was something that really impressed me. The first illustration that I did with this set was kind of using a I wouldn't call it a monochromatic color palette, but I used a lot of muted tones and blues, and this set really catered to that. So I colored my original character, Volana, who's kind of like a moon goddess. If you've been around on my channel for a while, you've probably heard her name come up a time or two, although I don't draw her nearly as much as I should. But I really found that the colors in this set served that illustration very, very well. However, I didn't use very many of the colors in this illustration, so I wanted to do a couple of other demos as well, so I could use a few more of the colors for you guys. So I already kind of mentioned that point about the red color not really having a buddy, so I kind of refrained from using that in my illustration for that reason. So in that instance, it's probably a color I will never use in this set unless I am supplementing it with other markers from other brands. The markers blend really, really easily, and I'm very impressed. And as far as I can tell, they feel virtually no different than Copic markers. I could tell when I was coloring with these markers that they were really, really full with ink. They weren't dripping all over the paper, but the nibs were definitely very saturated. So I do feel like they're not skimping out on you by not filling the markers up all the way. And it's overall just a really good marker to start out with. I already mentioned the similarities between the ink types, kind of the Copic markers being more sheer, and I do feel like the fine techs are very much the same. And in my personal opinion, this is a sign of a more high-end marker. That sheerness to the ink is what really allows you to blend and create smooth gradients and mix colors when you have a more limited color palette. So I actually think that this is something really, really important. And I hope that you guys can kind of appreciate that even though this isn't the most pigmented marker, more pigment does not always equal better quality. So that is pretty much it for my thoughts on these markers. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. Let me know what other markers you would like to see me review. And if you would like to purchase a print of this Volana illustration, that is available in my Store Envy shop. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I am running a promotion on my Store Envy shop for this month, and if you purchase this print, then you are going to support my European adventures, so I would greatly, greatly appreciate that. I'm planning on turning the second illustration of the 3 girls with the crazy colored hair into like a sticker set or something, but I kind of have to clean them up and rework them a little bit, so stay tuned for that because I posted some of them on my Instagram stories and you guys really seem to like them. So anyway, that's it for me today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you from the bottom of my heart, and I hope to see you very soon. Bye!